Hi, my name is Tia Quinn, and I'm an astrologer here in Washington. I'm here today at my granny's house in Bellevue, and I've been studying astrology seriously for probably about 6 or 7 years at this point. I met my teacher Kaypacha at the River of the Stars conference in Hawaii in 2015, and I ended up completing an apprenticeship with him and learning astrology. I also study a lot by myself, and so that's been my background with astrology. It's always been a big interest, even when I was a little girl. And so now I'm kind of stepping into being more of my own astrologer. The title of my talk today is Venus Retrograde in Scorpio, Uncovering the Mystery of the Heart. In my talk, I will cover both archetypes of Venus in Scorpio and also in Libra, because she will retrograde through both signs. The focus of this talk will be on the relationship side of Venus and not so much on her representations of money or talents or the like. I'll go through some important dates and transits that Venus will be making during her retrograde cycle and give some examples of how this might be impacting the relationships in your life. And finally, I will offer an exercise for this retrograde and end with a question and answer. So Venus retrogrades begins tomorrow on October 5th. It entered the shadow period on September 2nd, which means shadow in astrology is the zone where a planet travels over the same territory that it will retrograde. A planet goes out of shadow the moment it passes the degree it's stationed in retrograde. So that will be, Venus will be in shadow from the 2nd all the way till December 16th. She re-enters the sign of Libra on Halloween and goes direct on November 16th at 25 degrees Libra. So these are some of the important aspects that Venus will be making during her retrograde cycle. We're going to begin the retrograde with Venus making an exact square to Mars, which recently went direct in Aquarius. Squares are an aspect that generate events and action, and so the dynamic between the masculine and feminine can be kind of volatile right now. It can be good in a way where, sparks could be flying and, you could be really attracted and kind of, ready to have some good sex or something, or it could be a battle, that's to remember. Something that on a grand scale is kind of reflecting this energy. You can kind of see it clearly in the current affairs in the US, where a lot of women are challenging men that have abused their power, which is a very scorpionic theme, and have been getting some serious flack for it. So while the masculine is going direct and the feminine is kind of going inward, but also kind of upset of the injustices. Mercury is going to make a conjunction with Venus on October 15th. And it's a good day for introspection. Retrogrades are always periods of reflecting on, how things have been going so that you can come up with a new path and figure out what needs to change to have a successful and transformative Venus retrograde. At the end of the presentation, I have an exercise I will share that could be really helpful to do during this little Mercury-Venus conjunction, but I'll share with that later. Venus also will sextile Saturn in Capricorn, will give us the opportunity to stabilize the positive changes that you want to make in your life, and how do you want your reality to change, and what do you really truly want to attract into your life to make it like a solid new beginning. The Venus makes a conjunction to the Sun on the 26th, which happens to be my solar return. I'm pretty happy about that. So it'll be a good time to, of course, celebrate my birthday and take time to appreciate the beauty in life. And even if everything might seem a little difficult, or things are changing and shifting and it feels a little unstable, Venus is going to square the nodes on the 30th, and we have this choice whether we're going to stay in known territory or jump forward and leap forward into the unknown and grow. The nodes are in their last moments of Leo and Aquarius. They've been there for over a year now. And the North Node in Leo has been really calling us to engage our hearts and our creations and to get out there and be creative and not be so detached. So this is a good time to, incorporate our relationships in this and, move forward. Halloween, we have Venus opposing Uranus. And it's kind of good to ask, do the values that we're sharing with others line up with what our individual awakenings are, as Uranus is transiting in the opposite sign in Taurus. This can be kind of disruptive for relationships if you're not really loving yourself also. And Venus moves into Libra at Halloween. Soon after, we'll make aspects to Chiron, kind of an uncomfortable quincunx. So it's I feel like, when you're not in harmony with yourself, there's kind of a void of feeling, and being in harmony with the other is kind of difficult. So, but if you're doing good time, it's a good time to reflect on the healing changes that need to be made. And then towards the end of the transit, Venus trines Mars. So cooperation between the masculine and feminine are possible. It's a good time to reaffirm the positive changes that you want to make and which direction that you would like to take once it resumes its forward motion. Okay, so this transit has a great deal to do with relationships, as it'll be traveling back through the signs of Scorpio and Libra, which are both signs that represent relationships, just in slightly different ways. This Venus retrograde will test our relationships to make sure they're not hindering our growth and our evolutionary process. And this transit is about figuring out what's hidden beneath the surface of your attractions and what new you want to bring into your life after the big let go. So Venus in Scorpio is a ride or die kind of gal. She forms relationships with what is perceived to be more powerful than the self. And so through merging and uniting with something outside yourself that's more powerful, you learn about it, you osmose all of that energy and become, a new form of self that is changed forever. And Venus in Scorpio is an archetype that values deep connection. This retrograde will accentuate the need for this to be the case in all of your relationships. Venus in Scorpio is seeking empowering relationships that improve your life, are growth-oriented, and that are grounded in self-love. If you're fostering only a shallow connection during this period, then it's likely to fall apart and come to a natural ending, so that love that is truly transformative can come in. Both signs, Libra and Scorpio, deal with relationship, and there's a distinct humorous difference between Libra and Scorpio that I thought of. And I don't know, there's a slang in my generation when you first meet someone and you're not really dating yet, and it's we're talking. So that's the Venus side of this. It's you see the person, you're attracted to them, and we're talking. And then by the time you reach Scorpio, the talking's over. We're fucking now. So it goes from an exchange of words, which is the air sign, to exchange of fluids, which is the water sign there. Venus is home in the sign of Libra. Being cardinal, Venus initiates social interactions. It reaches out to the other as a way of learning about the self. Venus returns to the sign of Libra on October 31st and stations there direct on the 16th. In dipping back into Libra, the energy will lighten a bit and become a little less intense in Scorpio. So it's a good time to reflect and figure out how your transformation is progressing through feedback from others. So, check in with your friends, check in with your partner, and kind of really see how you're doing with this transformation. I think this quote merges Libra and Scorpio perfectly. If you want to grow and evolve, start hanging out with the right people. You can't speak butterfly language to caterpillar people. This next part, we have Venus. The Venus cycle, it takes about 584 days for Venus to make a full cycle. A synodic cycle is the period between one conjunction of a celestial body and another. So right now we have Venus kind of sandwiched in between the Earth and the Sun from our perspective. And so it's called an interior conjunction. So the Venus cycle tracks one interior conjunction to the next. It returns to the same place it retrograded every 8 years. Last time Venus retrograded in Scorpio was in 2010. And during this cycle, Venus will be reappearing as a morning star after leaving our sunset skies. Let's see. So the myth of Inanna, the goddess of heaven, kind of really ties quite well into the Venus retrograde story. And I'll read you the story here. So Inanna hears her sister, who rules the co-ruler of the underworld, crying out to her. And in compassion and love for her sister, she decides to make the journey into the underworld to go visit her grieving sister whose husband's just died. And along the way, she's required to release. She came down, bawling out. She had all kinds of jewelry on and a crown and a nice dress and all of her pretty possessions. And as she descends into the underworld, they're taking through her from her as she passes each of the 7 gates into the underworld. And of course, she gets down and she's completely stripped of everything. And her sister kills her and hangs her on a meat hook. But she warned her favorite servants that something like devious like that might happen. And so they come down and they give her the elixir of life and she's reborn again. But she doesn't take any of what she's brought down there with her, all of her adornments and all of her things. She has to let them go as she goes down there. And, Ereshkigal, I feel, kind of represents just the kind of shadow side of herself that she has to face and, release her shadow self before she can be reborn again. And Scorpio is a sign that wants to see what's underneath the surface of things. But, we all have shadows and a side that we keep hidden and behind veils. And the Inanna myth perfectly demonstrates the need to let go so that rebirth is possible. I was thinking about my personal Venus retrograde, the past few retrogrades, and I remember I painted my largest piece ever. It's like about 3.5 feet by 5 feet high, and I started at live painting at a show, a Govinda show, and it took the entire 40 days for me to complete it, like a full Venus retrograde cycle. And then fast forward to the next Venus retrograde in 2017. I'd broken up with this guy and it was at his house and he really fucked me over, and I ended up leaving it there. It was something I had to let go. And so one of my largest pieces that I could have sold for a lot of money and everything, it was really valuable to me. And it happened to be this Inanna painting, Queen of Heaven Descends. I had to let it go. This quote really resonated with me in relation to this Venus cycle. Venus in Scorpio is looking for this kind of love, one that brings you closer to your passions and helps you evolve as a soul. If you do it right, love can be transformative and assist you on your evolutionary path quite a great deal. And the kind of relationship that Venus in Scorpio and in Libra is looking for is one of harmonious depth. So there are two ways that this could be going for you. And I came up with this. There's some symptoms of a positive beginning. You're ready for some transformation. While this experience could be intense, let's see, sorry. A lot of us are like ready for this level up. We're ready to move forward in our lives and attract the right things. And so if you're experiencing this kind of relationship, you're on the right track, and keep it up. You put your focus on things that are working for you. Your interactions with others should leave you feeling full and powerful and refreshed and ready to expand into new levels of intimacy, commitment, and deep harmony. So I put the symptoms of a positive beginning. Your individual talents are accentuated and supported within the container of the relationship. You feel regenerated, renewed, and energetic, and you grow a lot with this partner, and massive level ups are happening on all levels, physically, spiritually, and mentally. It's fall here where I live, and nature is always a good example, and it gives us a really stunning visual here as the trees start shifting into their winter mode and the leaves are falling. And it's a really good example of the letting go process that this Venus retrograde represents and the changings of the seasons represent. I had an experience a few years ago where I was listening to a Tantra teacher, and she was giving a lecture about graceful endings. And I had a huge realization that, myself included, you hold on to like people and places and things way longer than it's necessary. And it's best to be graceful and move along. So attaching to what's no longer growth oriented can, really hurt you on your path to evolve as a soul. And so it's good time, if you are doing those things, to start letting them go. Venus retrograde often brings endings to the relationships if they are keeping us from growing. Jupiter's been in Scorpio all year, so the whole theme of letting go has been, really in play. If something's holding you back from expanding, and growing as an individual and a soul, it'll definitely get taken from you. Whether you like it or not. So it's best to be graceful about it and move along and be happier for it. Don't be the leaf clinging to the tree when it's time to fall. And some symptoms of an ending, you feel drained. It's the opposite feeling. You feel drained of energy. Things aren't moving the way you want. You're stuck in a puddle. One partner will be trying to control the other's trying to control you. And then you live life in disharmony in this way, and it's really not something that leads to happiness, and it's not really what you want to be attracting in your life. And I pulled this quote from Jeff Green's Pluto book, Volume 2. He's talking about Venus and Scorpio, and when an attachment becomes a causal factor inhibiting further growth and evolution, then a removal of that which is preventing necessary growth will occur. So, you know, this happens whether you like it or not. You know, you can like hold on to something that's not good for you, or you can make the choice to move forward in your life. It's also true what you say, like you can't love other people without first loving yourself. Venus retrograde is a good time to go inward and reflect not only on your outward connections with other people, but your personal relationship with yourself. This is especially since, you know, Uranus is opposing Venus in Taurus, and we're all waking up to, you know, our unique talents and, you know, capacities and that self-love that lies within all of us. So, you know, if you're not bringing that to the table, then it's really hard to have a good relationship with anyone. So I came up with this Venus retrograde exercise for everyone to do. And there are two parts to this exercise. Step 1 is easier, and part 2 requires a little more work, but it's totally worth it. I have a stellium in Scorpio, so I like throwing shit away and getting rid of shit and moving along. And so, yeah, this exercise represents that. So the first part of the exercise, like Inanna, we all have material items that we cloak ourselves in. I want each and every one of you to pick 7 items, just as you pass through the 7 gates down into the underworld. And this can be anything that's lying around your house, cluttering your house, something you don't need. Maybe it's something you loved at one point, but it's time to move it along. And get rid of them, release them. You can throw them away, you can give them to a friend, give it to Goodwill, whatever you got to do. And then replace that item with one item that you love, something that's really beautiful and a proper representation of what your values are, like what you put, you know, what you find really beautiful. And make a little Venus retrograde altar for these 40 days and put it there. Part 2 is a little more difficult. You need a piece of paper and a pen. And so with this piece of paper, you draw a line down the middle of the paper. On one side, take a moment and you write down any of the kind of negative patterns that you see in your life, things that are limiting your expansion, whether it's relationships or your work or whatever it is, and any grudges or baggage or bad feelings that you might be carrying around with you. And then on the other side of the paper, write down the harmonious things you have going for you, and add in also what you would like to be attracting into your future once the cycle is complete. Be as detailed and passionate about it because, you know, that's what this is all about. And in the end of the exercise, rip the whole paper in half, right down the middle, the paper that holds all of your grumbly vibes and like bad attitudes and what you don't need anymore in your life. Find a way to destroy that and get rid of it also. So throw that away. But then the side with what you really want to be attracting in your life, put that on your little Venus retrograde altar and use it as a reminder during this cycle of what you do want to be manifesting and attracting in your life. I hope this exercise is helpful for everyone. May you be reborn like Inanna. And I'd like to conclude my presentation with this gorgeous painting. My friend in Hawaii, Robin Chance, she painted this. And it's my wish and hope that everyone ends their Venus retrograde somewhat like this. So that's my presentation. Best of luck. If you have any questions or comments, I'm ready to hear them.
Thanks so much, Tia. That was amazing. Thank you. When do we start writing down that list?
probably during that Mercury-Venus conjunction would be a good day for that, just like sit down, think about where you're at, and get ready to let go.
The issues are already starting to come up now, though, aren't they? And yeah, that's good. I love your presentation. So beautiful, lovely pictures. I love this one. Gorgeous. So does anyone in our audience have any questions? Please go ahead. Or comments they'd like to make?
I was wondering, would you look at the, especially if you do not have Libra or Scorpio on the 7th house, would you look at the 7th house and the 2nd house also, as far as maybe where some of the lessons, that might be coming up for it during this retrograde?
Are you talking about specific planets in the 7th or 2nd house, or looking to that if you don't have planets in Scorpio or Libra?
Actually, both. Whether you have planets there or not.
Well, you'll have, that's a good question. Maybe Linda, can you help me out with that one? I'm trying to think. I'm sure, like when planets are transiting those houses, is Venus transiting any of those houses, or?
Yes, I would definitely look at the ruler of the 2nd and the 7th houses, absolutely, because that's part of the Venus archetype. So that just automatically is drawn in. Does that answer your question, Wanda?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I could add something. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're talking about destroying the paper, the half, and someone told me, and I'd never thought of it before, but by burning something that it actually activates it. Mm-hmm. And that when we really want to get rid of something, it's good to lose it from our consciousness. So she recommend tearing it up into pieces and maybe corking it in a bottle and putting it in the recycling bin, or just making sure it goes someplace.
I'm all about burning things. I love burning stuff.
Yeah, but it can be an act of activation.
Yeah, and especially since it's getting colder, so definitely been starting some little fires. So it's a good way to get rid of it.
Yeah. So anyway, she just suggested losing it from your consciousness, where you actually don't know where it is. And like a subtle get rid of things, just like lose it.
Yeah, it works pretty well. I just had a huge bonfire back in May and got rid of a bunch of stuff I didn't need. It got a little out of hand too. It was kind of like a 20-foot high fire. So, I mean, do it safely.
I always thought that it was burning the rubbish. Like when you burn it, you're burning the rubbish, right? And so I don't see how that would activate it. Della, are you saying it activates it?
Yes, that's what I was told. And it's like something I had never conceived of until someone said it like that. But
then how?
I reframed kind of like fire being spirit, and it is an activation, like a spark. And so to truly, if we like, it's not to say truly, I'm not trying to say one way is better than another. I'm just sharing what was shared with me. That
maybe activates the destruction of those patterns and, habits.
Well, yeah, that it would reactivate the things that you're trying to leave behind. It's like a way of honoring them by activating. I don't think I'm explaining it very well.
What do you think, Tia?
Well, I think it's a good way of like getting rid of it and releasing the energy, because, you know, the fire would consume it completely, and, you know, you could do it and kind of like with a flair and some drama, you know, get rid of it properly. But, you know, it's also, you know, taking that, you know, fire element action afterwards to, you know, put it into action, and what you really wanted to let go of, make sure that it's been, you know, completely cleansed in the fires and actually released.
I think fire can be used for both, you know, activation and destruction. So it depends on the intention. So fire, you know, fire is intention, right? It's desire, it's intention. So, you know, you can intend to destroy something, burn up the rubbish, or to activate it. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get rid of it? I mean, there it is written on the paper, and what would you do? You know,
Well, I might tear it up into pieces and take it down to a river or a stream, since it's like Venus and Scorpio, and like release the pieces that way and know that the stream is taking them away from me. It's also a suggestion. I'm not like trying to say any one way is better, but
I like that.
yeah.
I got a creek right outside. I got this.
Yeah, I love that, Adela. That's a great suggestion.
I've been taught to, on the new moon, we release things, and depending upon what kind of moon it is, you can either put what you want to get rid of in moving water, or bury it, or for fire and air, I think it's kind of the same. Like you burn it, but you release it to the air. And that's, you know, that's what I've been guided to do and feel good about. But chacun a son goût. Is Maddie still here? To each his own.
That's a great suggestion, don't you think, Tia?
Yeah, take it down by the river. That's what all those songs are about. Shooting your baby down there and moving along.
Or if it's in an earth sign, bury it. I like that. That's really good, Carolyn. Thanks for that.
How about putting it in the compost?
Worms do like eating paper, so you can put it in your worm bin and get rid of it that way.
Wish.
Be fertilizer for your future gardens.
But that would actually be like, I think, one of the best ways. Like, we all want everything we're releasing to regenerate us and bring us new energy and like fortify what we have coming for us. So I think that's really brilliant.
Okay, any final questions or comments? Okay, Tia, thank you. Yes, wonderful to have you. Thank you so much. Would you all please thank Tia Quin?
Thank you, Tia. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tia.
Yeah, that was great.
It was great.
Thank you. That was great.